So flying, there's lots of terms when you're doing filming, whether it's film or TV. Things like checking the gates, and and it's a wrap, and all these different things, and cuts. But there is a saying that's on there called flying in. It is the urgent call to let cast and crew know they need something ASAP near the camera. It could be background actors, it could be a prop, it could be a hairstyle, a wig, whatever it is. And so this is the title of the book, Flying in My Adventures in Filmmaking, because this person also is needed near the camera ASAP. She is a producer and head of production at GoldCrest Films, and she's award winning. And she's my new friend on here, Gretchen McGowan. Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, thanks for having me, James.
It's my pleasure. Congratulations on the book. Congratulations. You gave birth to this book. It's a sort of birth to this book. Was it scary to put it out? Was it exciting? Was it nerve-wracking? What was it like for you to put this book out?
Yeah, it was a little scary because not many people had read it, and so many people play small roles in it, and some people play some big roles in it. I tried to kind of give them a heads up. It's like, hey, you're kind of a featured player in an upcoming movie, but it happens to be a book. and
Yes.
and let them know. And I had to treat some situations with kid gloves and back away from it because ultimately, though, the story is about my career growing as a producer and a lot of the mistakes I made along the way. It's not, one of those Hollywood tell-alls where I'm going to take down people who I worked with. That's somebody else's story to tell. This is the one I wanted to tell that I thought could be more helpful to people.
Yeah, no, you actually kind of you show us in your book what a producer can do and what they do because people hear producer, they don't. Director seems like we know they direct a film. Editor, they edit a film. Like seems it's more people seem to get that easier than an actor acts in a film. You say producer, like well, what does a producer do? I know they mean producing, but like what does that mean? And your book actually tells us your whole journey in that. But when someone asks you what's a producer, what do you say?
Yeah, it's funny. My sister once in a while will say, now, when you go into work, what's the first thing you do?
Get coffee.
And I laugh because like, well, every day is different, especially as head of production when you're overseeing like 12, 13 movies at a different time, at different stages, and
Yeah.
they're all suffering their growing pains in different areas. There's no one set thing that a producer does, is there? There's so many things, and in a way, that's why none of us are really good at it. That's why all of us are constantly growing because the technology is changing, the people are changing, the collection of people changes, and the challenges on every given film change. And that's why I like it, really, because you just don't know exactly how many visual effects you're going to get hit with, what decisions a director is going to make, what decisions a DP is going to make. All those things, because it's a collaborative art, affect the job that you do as producer. Now, there are the things. We have to hire the casting director. We have to make sure we get the right heads of department that match up to the material that we're going to shoot and that are the best possible personality match for the director and the other producers and the other team members. So, there are the things that we're always going to do. We're going to make sure the schedule is in place, that we have the right budget, very importantly, that again is a match to the material that we're working with. Oftentimes people will come in with a budget for their film and it's based upon the last movie they made. And yet this movie's a totally different animal. It's a good starting place, but it is not where you can take the next movie because you'll get all thrown in all sorts of directions, a different season, a different location, a different story. So it's fun because you are in a way distilling a script and all the players into what makes your job tick, what your budget is, your schedule is, and all the players.
Are you organized? Are you an organized person, or do you have a good team around you?
I'm organized. I have to be because I sometimes am just working completely alone. And, you know, during the pandemic, we were all creating our own systems. I think I got better at it during the pandemic
Okay.
because we were sort of forced to, and you don't have an assistant working in the next room. You had to set up a way in which, you know, you have James at 2 o'clock that day, and you have to tune in early. I'm always early.
Yeah, I love
I recommend being early,
it.
especially
I
in
do
New York.
too. I do too.
Everybody, right. Everybody is so short on time. You can always read a book or something before you get there, but that's one of my policies is to show up early. And that allows me to be organized, right? Because when you're running late, you just tend to be discombobulated and then you throw the other person out of whack. And it's your responsibility as a producer to shine a light on the people you're working with or potentially working with. So set them at ease and make sure you give them the best platform to show their best selves. But yeah, I use a number of different systems to stay organized. The normal ones, like the moving magic programs, which you
Yes.
kind of have to learn,
Yes.
and the final draft and whatnot to be able to make changes to a script. And then it's just a good old fashioned notebook every day. And I
Okay.
give anybody who's working with me a good sturdy notebook because like my going back to my sister's question about what do you do when you get into work every day, what's the first thing you do besides make a cup of tea, is to make a list of all the things you intend to do that day.
Yeah, attend. As you
Right?
said, attend. Yes, attend. Intend to do. Yes.
And with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
right? But you may not get to all those things, but you at least have a set of priorities, and then you're going to get pulled in a bunch of different directions. So
Okay.
it's a start place.
Yeah. I like that. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Running my companies, I have a list. Oh, I make coffee in the morning, strong coffee, and then I get my little list. And actually, I mean, I do get a lot of my list done, and some of it gets transferred to the next day. And some things are really important today. And you're right. And then you get a phone call that takes precedence. Now you take so. I still think having that foundation, that organized foundation, you still can work with pretty well within that.
I think so. It provides a structure so that you can be more flexible when the weird things come up and throw you out of whack. You just can't get so rigid about that list that you get frustrated at the end of the day. It's just a starting place. Also, don't fill up the page with things that you have to do. I
Yeah.
had a really good suggestion the other day about your phone, and that is to keep the home page of your phone as clear as possible, maybe one or two apps that you use all the time, and then move the other ones further down. And I have to say, I feel less stressed out looking at my phone
I
by
like.
having cleared those apps out. My
I,
tip of the day.
I like that. I'm going to seriously look into that. Actually, I'm looking at my phone. I like that idea. Well, our phones are literally our lives. I mean, our phones represent a lot of our lives. They're mini computers. They're mini everything. I mean, ugh.
More and more. And we talk about that list. I'll be in a conversation, somebody will step away and I have that notes and I use that to reprioritize who I need to be in touch with. It's
Yeah,
like, ooh, so you're informed by so many things throughout the day, your priorities shift again. So that this is a great way
yeah.
to keep track of those things.
What I love about your story is the same with me. We started from scratch. So you didn't have your great grandfather who was a producer for 50 years, and then it was like you got into the business. So I go through to read the book, of course, but can you give a little synopsis of kind of how you got into your first kind of couple of producing gigs?
Yeah. So I was a theater major in college, had every intention to produce theater, thought I was going to head straight to Broadway and begin producing shows, or at least, stage managing. That I couldn't make any money in the theater world. Everything was an internship. You had to know somebody. They were happy to hire you as an intern for, $50 a week or something. I just couldn't, I wasn't in a position where I could do that. I was a nanny. I did a bunch of different odd jobs just so I could be in New York because that was the number one priority.
New
Get
York
to New
City.
York. I got here. And, just walking around New York, just the energy, the
I
vibes,
I
and
agree.
so incredible, right? So eventually I circled an ad in the Village Voice for an office manager job at a film production company. And they supported their film habit with real estate. So my job was calling the plumber and then hiring the crew.
I love it. I love it. There's no jobs like that. There's no jobs like that anymore, man. That makes me laugh. It's like you're busy taking care, like they need some exterminator at this place, yet you're also talking about what's happening on the set. I mean, I love that. I love
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And you know what? And they were kind of related. The two jobs, not it, I'm just calling the plumber once in a while is what I'm doing to get through the day. Make sure that the fire extinguishers are good to go, that sort of thing. Make sure the boiler doesn't break down.
Yes.
And yeah, then I would at night I started to do more and more work in the editing room at this same company. They had a flatbed and I would rewind and sync the dailies for what we filmed that day. And eventually they could see, I think Gretchen wants to be in the editing room. So they hired a new office manager and I got to do the editing, but I was freelance. I became freelance, which was scary being freelance and knowing I had to look for my next job. I, I, I do think that every job I've had since the first job I worked with Toby Shimon, she was the editor and I was her assistant, has been just a few degrees of separation from that first job. It all goes back to, which is to say that it's such a small world, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a company town now. It's grown
Yeah.
incredibly, especially in New York now that with all the episodic work, but you do have to make sure you keep your relationships in good order because it is a
Yes.
small world.
Ooh, but I'm just that I'm gonna say small town, I'm gonna say small industry because a lot of us I work with both coasts. I work
Yep.
on both coasts, and now you add Atlanta now and at other places. We're all connected somehow. We're probably all 1 or 2 degrees away from each other. There's probably people that I know, and we don't even know that we know each other. Like you just don't know, but you never know, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, and when you're freelance, you especially need to just be like you're working, but you're looking for your next gig already, right? You're kind of have one ear out there. I'd be taking resumes around to the Sound One building, putting them under people's doors, and so it was a difficult way in, but editing was an interesting way into producing. Eventually, that led to working in documentaries as an associate producer and kind of doing more of that work from the editing room to associate producing. And then from that, I got the offer to do Heavy up in upstate New York, which I was ill prepared for, but ready and had a great group of people who were already hired. So I just had to round out that crew. That was Jim Mangold's first film. Heavy, and it was Shelley Winters, it was Debbie Harry and Liv Tyler. Evan Dando was in it. A lot of musicians.
yes. I want to ask just really quick, just a little side note. I mean, I have other questions, folks, that are like related to the. But how was Deborah Harry? I'm a huge Blondie Deborah Harry fan. She had done acting in the '80s. That's when she started doing Videodrome. That's why I'm just a huge. So what was it like? I just want to know any little tip you want to give me about Deborah Harry. I still love to meet her one day, but yeah, any tip.
She was a joy to work with because she wasn't above hanging out with the crew. She would stay on set when it wasn't even her scene coming up. She would sort of just stay there. She and Joe Grafazzi were very crew friendly. And I like a cast member that is going to hang out with the crew and is
All right.
friendly with the crew and says good morning. Even just the basics make me happy when a cast member is, you
Yeah.
know, sort of giving with the crew. So she was a very generous person to work with. And she would like compliment my outfit when I was wearing not a very nice outfit, just to, make you feel better. You could tell she was throwing you a bone. And I remember running into her on the street. It's in the book, actually, years later, and saying, "Oh, Debbie, it's Gretchen from Heavy." And she invited me to do a show, and I was just like, so starstruck by seeing her on the street.
And she's New York also. She's New York City. I mean, she's CBG. She's like, I mean, she's like the art scene. I mean, Deborah Harry is just like, I mean, she's New York.
Yeah. So New York. So New York. She had her dog with her too. So that was an important part of her, that her comfort level was having her dog with her.
Well, I want to ask you about that earlier about editing because we've mentioned it now, and like I said, you're in a house full of editors right now and stuff. What is the one? I always feel like isn't that how the movie really comes together? Is the edit? Is that to me? It's almost like the most. I mean, I know you need the script. Obviously, is very important, and actors are very important. But I mean, a movie is shaped because of the editing, isn't it? That's the most important part, right?
It's like so much focus, with the glamour of making films and so much of what you see in behind the scenes. Of course, the photogenic part of it for the audience is the making of on set, right? Of course, it's a very consolidated, probably like 7, 8 weeks for the kind of films that we do. And it is the most all the money's being spent there, the big money, what your day costs are when you're filming are much, much higher than when you get into post. So it's really kind of behind closed doors, a lot of that work. And yet, a good director is very, very involved in that process and has memorized their dailies and has taken them in, like absorbed them osmotically, and knows by the time they get in the editing room, they'll be looking at a scene and say, oh, that I have another take of that. We have another angle. And the editor might say, I'm not sure we do. And the director will say, oh, yeah, we do. And sure enough, they do because they were there on set. They know exactly what they covered if they were
Yeah.
truly paying attention. And knowing what those options are can make all the difference in a scene. Going to the two shot at just the right point can make all the difference. So I'm glad I came from an editing background so that I have that sort of appreciation for the process, for the gestation period, what it really takes to find a movie. Because even though, like you say, you've got this script, it's written, right? How hard can it be? For a narrative, it's not a documentary, and we're sticking most of it in narratives today. It's written. So it's just like, I just need to find the right angle. And yet the right editor will eke amazing things out of something. They'll know when to go to the establishing shot and when to skip it. And when we lose a scene, which is so hard to watch when you've spent all that money on a scene and you're trying to make it work and you're trying to fit it in edgewise, and an editor has that perspective because they weren't on set usually, to say, this scene, it isn't working, it's not necessary, and I can solve the problem of what you established in this scene with a solution in this next scene. So you all be listening. This is like different kind of collaboration, but the true collaboration of finishing the movie.
Yeah, I completely appreciate it more. I mean, I've done some acting stuff. I like being a producer myself and behind the scenes, but I remember one show I was in. I really noticed how the editor they shot it from behind, and there was like somebody was blurred out, and then they brought him in at the right time, and like the music came in, and like and I remember Butch was sitting going, "That was a really good shot." Like it was like you could just tell you go, that really enhanced the story. Like you got the feel like anybody could just film it a certain way and it would have been whatever, but they added certain things in it and then you go, that was a good choice of the director, but then the editor caught it, and then like somehow, I'm noticing it more and more when I see stuff go, that was really good. Like that was a good director of photography, of course, or cinematography, that was good too. But the editor did this, it was the right timing. Like it was the way they did it was the right timing. I don't know, just
Yeah, that's interesting. When they talk about, as a writer, they talk about close reading, which I started to do a lot of when I was writing this book or trying to write it. And so I read like Anthony Bourdain's books, and I
oh
when I
yeah,
read
yeah,
it, I would do kind of like what you were saying. I would read the whole thing, and then I would go back in and do a close reading of it. And that's kind of like film school for those of us who didn't go to film
yeah.
school. And my husband is a key grip. So he's been on set for years and years. And you watch a movie with him, I'll be like, oh, that's the tracking shot before they were doing tracking shots with a giant camera. Whatever, he'll point out to you exactly what's going on in a scene and that you didn't think about. And hopefully you get to watch it kind of without the commentary first. And then you get the commentary, right? Like those old discs that we used to have. You could turn the commentary on. I don't know why that doesn't exist anymore. I love commentary.
Me too. No, me too. I love it. I love it too. Like I'm also a songwriter and I write songs, and I've noticed that nowadays um, the chorus starts first in a lot of songs. Now they're getting to the quick. Now they're cutting it. They're cutting the intro short. The attention spans. Like I notice all that stuff. The regular person doesn't know. They don't notice that. And when I point it out, they go, "Oh, I see what you're saying." So you're right. Some of us are in. That's one thing. I was going to ask you. That's my next question is because you are a producer and have all this experience along the way, can you watch a film or can you watch a TV show episode? Can you watch stuff and turn it off?
I can. I really can still. What are we were watching Bad Sisters last night. I don't think I thought once about where the camera was or where the
Good.
crew was. So if I'm not thinking about where the crew is and what they had for lunch that day, it's a successful show, isn't it? Right? So
Right, exactly.
I love getting lost in the movies. I wouldn't still be doing it if they didn't allow me to escape. They've gotten us through, I think, some of the toughest times. And all of us have seen this business threatened so many times, and it just keeps reinventing itself, and we keep shape shifting along with it to survive. Now, it's hitting the heyday with television still. Even through the strikes, it's making a bit of a bounce back in that department. So we keep surviving through different ways in the same way. But I think because even through the depressions, recessions, and great contractions, we need the distraction of great entertainment, and movies still allow us to get lost.
Yeah, that's true. And I agree with you. I'm the same way. I can turn it off. I have friends who can't do it. I'm like, I'm sorry you can't turn it off. Because I feel like there's times I want to enjoy something and I don't want to analyze it. I don't want, that note's a little, I don't want to hear, I want to think about that. I just want to go in and watch it. I love
Even
it.
for the second pass, the analytical pass, and then
Yes.
we'll do a
Oh,
dissection
yes,
of
yes, yeah, 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 that's different. I did that with, I was watching American Sports Story with Aaron Hernandez on Hulu, and I do the show for that, actually. I have a show for that. And I watched it first just to watch it. And then the second time I did the whole analyzing. Did it. So it's kind of cool. But okay. I miss the 90s. I miss the 80s and 90s. I do. I think I'm stuck there a little bit. So I want to ask, because I mean, they say that that was the golden age of the indie, starting with Sex Lies on Videotape in the late 80s and kind of going, they kind of say from that, we can even go to, David Lynch stuff, all the, Racerhead and, Twin Peaks, all that. But I feel like the 90s, especially in New York City, where a lot were coming out, like you said, you were thinking, everybody thinks theater in New York, like theater, Broadway, off Broadway. But there was a lot of indie stuff, and you were involved. I mean, folks, in this book, she was involved. I mean, from Brian De Palma, I'm like, hello. I mean, Jim Jarmusch. I mean, you were working with everybody. Was the 90s, in your opinion? I mean, I read the book and everything. Was that the golden age? I mean, it's still going now, but was that like a really golden heyday?
I think it was because people were willing to take a chance on some pretty crazy stories,
Yeah,
right? But Wall Street was into it. They were willing to say, hey, try that out. I'm not sure I'm going to get my money back, but try it out. When I started at Open City with Jason Cleo and Joanna Vicente, they had a company called Blow Up within their Open City. And it was, the motto of the company was surprise us, show us something we haven't seen. And the first movie they did was Chuck and Buck,
oh
which
yeah,
was
I love that movie.
Miguel Arteta's film
Yeah,
with Mike White.
like White.
And it was just and it was like a shocking film. Even
Oh,
in some,
it was crazy.
thinking down in my seat watching that movie, it was fantastic.
I agree.
But I don't think anyone would make that movie now. I just or they would have to. I don't know. I love the risks that were being taken. That people were just hitting it out of the park, and it paved the way maybe for them to do different kinds of careers after that. But they were doing a lot of fun stuff in the 90s. American Psycho was made a lot of adaptations were made also, and a lot of more standard studio films were being made. But I did Buffalo 66 in the 90s.
Without, no, wait a minute. That was one very controversial. When I saw you were involved in it, I was like, oh, she was involved in that. Because of Homeboy and all that stuff. And so, I mean, did it matter what project you got associated with? Or you just like, it's a project. I'm gonna produce what I produce.
It was such a rapid fire time because once I got into it and I was line producing at the time, which meant I was a little bit more hands-on with the budget than I would be as the producer. So, and with the crew, just making sure the crew was getting what they need and happy. But it was such an intense time because I went from one project to the next, one to the next. And the fear is I'm never going to work again if I don't take this job. So you tend to be a little less discerning than maybe you should be. And toward the end, 2 weeks to shoot, and you look up and say, what's next? And you start to hear what's going on. And your value at the time too was at the cocktail party, what are you working on? Well, you had to have an answer. You couldn't really be saying, I don't know, unless everybody else was saying it, like these days.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like, yeah, exactly. Not nowadays. Yes, you can get away with that. But no, I remember. It's just because especially that movie because that was Vincent Gallo, right? I think it was him, but it's like I forgot. Yeah, and I just remember I was like, there's so they were pushing the limits. I mean, that was something that I enjoyed. I mean, if I did enjoy every film I saw, I would have saw a lot of indie theaters started popping up, which was a great thing too. We were showing these because we'd have folks at home who are maybe a little younger watching this, have some younger fans. There was no streaming, there was no internet for much of it in the early days. It was, and a lot of them did not get played in the major theaters. Sometimes they didn't get the release. They had to go to smaller places to get played, or VHS release or DVD release only. Like it was like you had to go to special indie companies to actually get it from them directly. I mean, mail order. Remember that girl, mail order? I mean, like all that stuff. I mean, I remember all that stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, you would hope to get into a festival and use that as a launching place for your marketing.
Yes.
And be able to and hopefully you had a distributor by then too, or you were finding your distributor at the festival. That's happening less and less. Those are the success stories these days, but not too many films are being acquired at festivals anymore. But those were the great Cinderella stories, and still are, about a film getting launched there, getting publicity, and then the distributor picking it up and riding on the coattails and releasing it in the spring. That was an exciting time, and then even the VHS release, that was pretty exciting. Getting the box, deciding the box. People, we would go to Kim's and get 5 videos, and that was your weekend.
That's I love it. So you take me back. I miss it. I do. I miss it. I'm sorry, I'm old fashioned. I mean, and I know that right now physical media is making a comeback, which is very interesting. That's a whole other story, but it's coming back. People are wanting because not everything has been released on streaming. So people are like, I want that film. So a film like Scenes from the Class Struggle Above Beverly Hills or Longtime Companion, or I mean, there's all these like or Trick. Or there's a lot of films that came out that were indie that Party Monsters. Some went on streaming, some available anywhere. And a lot of them were made out of New York or out of LA. They're just kind of like out there in the world. I think I missed the whole video revolution of just.
Well, maybe we should get back to the DVD mailer thing that Netflix and Red Envelope started, so that we could just start our own DVD library and I don't know. We'd have to figure out how to make money on it.
Yeah, but sometimes it comes back around, so you never know, right? It comes back around. I would ask you because you have. I mean, I could talk. Oh my God, I could talk to you forever. I know time's going by, but you're so. I mean, it's like a kindred spirit. You've worked with. I mean, like I said, diverse. I named something earlier. We can add Wu-Tang Clan in there. Like I said, Shelley Winters, from Shelley Winters to Wu-Tang Clan. Like, how different can you get? I mean, I know you were doing your job, and it was a job. You talk about some of the stuff in the book. I want people to read the book. She'll tell you more detail. but it's in general, what is your approach as a producer working with talent? Ones
Yeah,
from known to unwell known.
you want to say, oh, talent's just like the crew, you just need to make sure they're well fed and well watered. But it is more than that. Of course, you're warming up to them, but by first working with their agent, so you find out if they only eat green M&Ms and what the particulars are.
Right,
Um,
right.
so that hopefully, and you're negotiating their contract too, right? So you know
Yeah,
what their specific needs really are, like the real ones. And what kind of assistant, whether they have a wig, whether they get a key light, all those kinds of things. So that by the time they arrive, hopefully you've set things up in such a way that they're going to be comfortable, because it's so much of it, much of the success of the film rides on them being comfortable on set, and that you have set up the right parameters. And if you have ever had to perform for a film, and probably everybody should take some acting classes too, so they know sort of the sensitivities involved in that you understand why they really have these certain needs. As long as they're not too extreme or too expensive, I think that they can be met, and that we just want to make sure that they're protected and that have the right kind of space to prepare and deliver. Because without them, there's no movie, and everybody knows that. But when we work on the kind of films that we work on, the indie ones, we try to keep it so that they're not their pay schedule isn't so much more extreme than anybody else's. That there's some kind of parity there, and that they're a part of the community of making the film. That they're invited to lunch, invited to the events that we throw throughout the thing, whether they choose to come or not.
have you ever been starstruck?
Oh, well, definitely Debbie Harry. Um, I think, let me think about who probably, yeah, there were a few along the way, but like you say, it is just a job. So you're really
Yeah.
just trying to, do like hit the list and make sure they're getting what they need. Without doing that, probably like initially with someone like Brian De Palma, I was starstruck,
Yeah.
and there was a job to do. So there was no time to waste, and you just kind of get to it.
I get no. When I interview, I remember the first time I met Ed Asner. I mean, we're talking nine-time Emmy winner, Mary Tyler Moore show, up all these things. And when he walked in, I was very starstruck for a little bit. I'm like, and I'm very professional usually, but I was like, I just have to gush on just for a second. Loveliest man. We became friends. I interviewed him like 5 times over the years, and then when he passed, I was very sad. But we had a good time. But I remember going, okay, but you're right. But then the professionalism comes in. I go, okay, I have an interview with him. I have him for 40 minutes. I got to do that job. I mean, I can't just be starstruck the whole time because those interviews look horrible. They don't do well. Same for you.
Yeah.
Like, a performance wouldn't. You can't handle your client because you're so busy being starstruck and fangirling. Something gets lost. So I, like you, got pulled together. Okay, we're going. I want to do this good interview so that he's actually happy. The fans get what they want. Same for you. Make sure the performance is good. The fans get what they want. So I understand what you mean. I kind of totally get what you're saying. That makes
Yeah, I agree. That wears off. And yet, they're special, right?
They are. They are.
Treat them like the very special talent there. There'd be no movie without them.
They
So,
wouldn't. So you really do understand all the components that go in. It's like they always say it's a miracle anything gets released and made. So you really know that. It's just that because you know from the very beginning, from contract negotiations and casting calls all the way to are we almost over budget because you filmed too long, to the sun is going out, we got to get this shot, to the music, and can we get a license? You probably know all of it, don't you? Like, you know all the parts of it, don't you?
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I find that a lot of line producers don't necessarily have that, as you say, the post-production and delivery experience. So they're great at getting the movie in the can, right? They're great at getting us through principal, probably staying on budget for the most part, but they're not able to necessarily think all the way through those things, the composer, what that schedule is going to look like, how we're going to record any live music ahead of time, how to make sure you have the right music before the film. In fact, if there are any publishing rights we need to deal with, that's always something. I've messed up on that before.
Really?
But you're going to have to mess up once or twice before you learn the thing too. It's one way of learning when you didn't
That's
go
true.
film.
No, it's true. It's true.
It is one way of learning is
Yeah,
to mess up
yeah,
once
yeah.
or twice. But yeah, having that kind of foresight to see what that schedule is going to look like, what to do. Again, you get that schedule and then something goes wrong. Well, you're better at adapting because you had a plan to begin with. But all the way through everything that's needed for delivery. And so much of that delivering the movie at the end is really good preparation in the beginning, making sure that you're set up to get through it. But knowing really what it takes to edit the film and how much time to do that. It just, even though we've come a long way with technology, and it's just a miracle what we've been able to do technically, what's changed and how fewer trees we go through by making a movie. It still takes the time it takes to edit the film because the editors are sleeping and dreaming about the scenes that they're cutting. Maybe they stop working at 7 at night, but they still go home and they're still editing in their head. I know they are. So all of that is good time, but it's the gestation of getting there. And that's the fun part, is watching it come together.
So I talked to you forever. I'm gonna ask you two last kind of couple of questions. And that's just I want to know your opinion on. So one is you are a female in this business. And so and you talk about that a little bit in the book, of course, obviously, and this is your experience. You're talking about how you kind of went through, which I enjoyed hearing your first person accounts and how stuff. But just for the fans out there, and do you have any advice for any female producer or any kind of up and coming producers? Is it a difference? Is there no difference? Is it just all about producing? I mean, what do you say?
I say, it's hard to know because I'm only a woman. I've never been a man, so it's hard to know what the differences are. But I have done a lot of panels with men. I've worked with a lot of male producers who I really admire, and maybe their styles might be a little bit different sometimes. And in the 90s, the male producers I worked with tended to be a little bit more bold. But I was the one who didn't ever say no, who always said yes to the next project. And something I probably would have done a little bit differently is saying yes to every meeting, taping every meeting, going to every panel, attending all those things, and being a little bit more proactive about the development of my career. Now, and it shouldn't be too hard on myself because I was probably working, right? But I look now at all the things that are offered by New York Women in Film and all these workshops, and I'm like, wow, I wish I'd taken that opportunity now. So if I were just getting out of film school or wherever, if I were headed in a film producing career, take advantage of each of those, take all the interviews and just reach out and ask for a cup of coffee with someone who's doing what you hope to be doing or is tangentially doing what you would like to be doing, because everybody has 15 minutes for a cup of coffee and we'll talk to you about it and maybe like right your ship a little bit. So that's something maybe I wish I could have done a little bit differently. I'd like to think I didn't miss out on anything along the way because I'm female. I'm sure I did, but who can know, right? I just kept saying yes and doing the best possible job
Yeah,
serving the.
good answer. I like that. Last one is, especially out in California, we're going through a little dry spell out here with the larger companies and things. But I'm part to I'm an Emmy voter, Emmy judge for daytime Emmys, and I'm also part of other organizations. Because again, like you said, the networking part, it's all about relationships in this business. It really is. That's how you get jobs. We're gig workers. We get gig to gig. You and I both are. So I made some great connections with Oscar people and I mean all that kind of stuff. But I'm seeing in these meetings, they're saying indie is in again. That indie is the way, indie is the now, indie is the future. So kind of lastly, what are your, I mean, I know indie's never left. Indie's always been around. It's not gone nowhere, folks. And I guess there's a movie that came out that was made for 2 million. It's horror film. It's now still like 80 million. Like we get these little stories here and there, right? So I just want to know what your thoughts are about indie today. Is it the now? Has it always been in? Like what are you thinking?
Well, of course, there are a few different ways to do an indie. And if we're talking about the kind of 2 million and under, there are a lot of ways to skin that cat, right? And the most often we're seeing that sort of thing that's financed, by an Amazon or by a streamer type of Hulu. And if not, if you can raise the money for a project like that, it's a kind of a small miracle, and yet it can be done, and we've seen it happen here over and over, still seeing that happen. It's just we're seeing it happen less often. I've heard this a few times recently, saying that indies are making on the upswing,
Yeah.
which I think, I mean, I hope is true. Or is it just a reflection of a lot of talent is leaving TV, so that talent is becoming available again in narrative features? And honestly, like, the narrative features have had a little bit of a dry reservoir because so much of that writing talent, showrunner talent, moved over to episodic and did so beautifully with it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's fun if we can see features come back. I love sitting down and watching a feature in one sitting, and yet I love episodic too.
Yeah.
So but the concern there is the distribution of something, that project you talk about that was 2 million and picked up for 80 or what have you, that's the exception. And we're just not seeing enough of that. We want to see more of it. Projects that will find international distribution, because the pre-sales world is kind of dried up as far as being able to finance a film through pre-sales, which is something that we used to do here at GoldCrest. So there are just only so many routes into financing a film. I would like to continue to do many of them.
Yeah. And I've read you're all in indie stuff. It's just funny, guys. I just know, like you just said, you brought actually that was a really good point about the actor pool kind of spilling back out into the into the world because of the other stuff happening. But it's funny, like you're right. Every once in a while you'll hear My Big Fat Greek Wedding or A Crying Game over the years that like it was really or what was the other big one, or Open Water, or or Blair Witch Project, the ones that those like Cinderella. I mean, oh my God, it made 20. It was made for $2 and it made like 200 million or whatever. You're right; those are still rare because I'm still naming them, and those are still. If you think of all the movies that have been come out, right, it's still rare.
That rare, and they're so few. So what's the likelihood that something that amazing is going to rise up if they're only 10% of those are being made these days?
Yeah.
But again, like the technology, the workflows are so simplified that you can get a camera and shoot in your grandmother's backyard, and you can make a pretty cool movie. And
Right.
you can edit it yourself. Well, we couldn't do that in the 90s. What we were shooting was like not industry standard anyway, but you really can do that now.
I think it was Tangerine was the first movie I saw that was made on the iPhone. And I
Yeah.
saw the movie like two or three times. I like it. That I saw first on the first one, they're like, that was made on an iPhone. I'm like, that was on an iPhone. Like it was pretty good. I mean, again, right editor and everything. Like, but it was shot. I mean, these iPhones are giving you some good camera. I was like very shocked. I was like, I mean,
Well, exactly. And we're trained now to, we watch in social media, we're flipping through Instagram and watching threads and whatnot. Our eyes are getting trained to accept that as entertainment.
yes.
So we've retrained our audience as a result of that to accept it. And of course, they're watching it on their phone too, very often if they're not going to the movie theaters. So
That's a really good point. We are retraining our eyes, kind of. Yeah, because before it's like when you saw film, like no matter what, you could tell it was film, different than
mhm.
television. And now television is being done in film
Yeah.
sometimes, on streaming. You're right. Yeah, I think about that, Gretchen. I like that. That's true. We are being kind of retrained a little bit.
all the time with something new. So who knows what comes next, right?
AI.
Yeah, some version of
We won't
this.
talk about that right now, but I'm just saying that, that something's happening over there. Gretchen,
But
you
I'm
are
excited about all the good stuff that's going to come out of AI.
right there, and there are some good, actually, and there are
Yeah.
some good stuff. I mean, I'm being funny, because everybody, because if you talk about anything in the business, it's like AI, AI. So I kind of said at the end, be funny, but no, it's there. There is actually some great stuff, and that's a whole other
Well,
conversation.
let's talk again in a year and we'll sort of do an evaluation of where AI is in the entertainment world.
I like that actually. I like that. Gretchen, you got a date. I love that. I love that
Okay,
idea. Well, you're
good.
a joy. I love talking to you. You're so good. Show your book again. The book's called Flying In. Show
Okay.
it on the screen. Folks who are watching my adventure in filmmaking. Run out and get it now. Run out. We have to run. You go on. Just go. Get on your phone and order it. It's going to Amazon. Order it. It's out.
Exactly.
But Gretchen, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, James. I really appreciate it.
It's fun. And folks, Imaging Pages is on Facebook, so go ahead and follow us there. I am on Blue Sky now, folks, under JLJ Media or James Lott Jr. One of the two. You can just it's James Lott Jr. at bsky.social or JLJ Media at bsky.social. I'm on Instagram, of course, and Facebook, all those different things there too. So follow us and support the indie arts. I say it all the time anyway. Support arts in schools. It's very important. My grandkids went to art-based schools, and they are better for it. It's better for math and art and science and reading. It's such an important part of life. I love seeing artistry come through in our youth. So support that. They're the future. They're our future filmmakers and people that she could help mentor and into becoming producers, and me mentor into becoming hosts or whatever. So like, let's support the arts, indie arts, and arts in schools. We'll see you next time.